how to prepare a label in PPS. When logged into PPS, navigate to Activities on the bar at the top of your screen, and about halfway down that list you'll see Prepare a Label. So clicking Prepare a Label will bring you to this window here, where we can then set up the details of our label and who's responsible for actually preparing that. So right at the top you'll see we've got a system user that's automatically been allocated, and that's typically the person that is preparing the label or setting up the activity. If you are preparing or scheduling an activity for the future, and you may want to allocate that to another user, you can do that by selecting the other user from the drop-down menu here. You can also change the due date and the time, again by using the appropriate controls if this is an activity that's due later on. Just underneath there you can also then select who the activity relates to, so whether that's a client or a third party, or whether it's related to nobody at all, so that last option is none. And typically none would be used when you don't want to store a record of this on the client log. So perhaps if you're doing some testing of a new label layout, we can choose none, because choosing client or third party will store a record on each individual log. So if you're selecting a client, for example, you can then search for the client using the normal search bar, which will then pull through the relevant details. And then just underneath there you'll have a list of available labels if you set up any label activity templates, or on the right hand side, this section here where I have some content, if you don't have any preset templates, you can just type directly into this part here. So you'll see in my list of available labels I've got some handy things such as client address, client record, and appointments and that kind of thing. So if we've set up a template previous to coming to prepare the label, I can use any of those to pre-populate my client data. So once I've chosen my label template or filled out the contents, I can then either choose print, which will print straight to my label printer, or if I'm printing out several details or several labels, I can choose the option to print to an A4 sheet. So what that will do is then give me the option to print the labels now, and I can choose at the bottom here to print a page of the same label, so a whole page of that same label. Or I've got the option to spool to print later. And on each of these I can either preview, so I can see what's going to be prepared, or I can print them straight away. And once I've printed my labels, so whether that's via the label printer or the A4 sheet, I can click on Outcome to complete this activity. Or if I'm not quite ready to do that just yet, if I click onto OK, it will simply pop a record of that activity onto the client log, and I can revisit that at any point and then process that label at a later time. In the bottom right hand corner I do also have a little More button, which will expand that window where I can add additional details, such as an additional associated practitioner, a category, or a treatment episode if they are relevant. We can also add further notes, or if I want to reschedule, so if I've scheduled that for my colleague but perhaps they're unavailable for when I've asked them to do that, they can perhaps choose a different due date and time here, and that will then pop up a bit later for them.